The whole section A is based on the tune Shiv Yog She Wore. Here's the notes of Shiv Yog She Wore as they are used in this work. We have a repeat sign there that goes back to here. As we had looked at when we were doing our traditional Irish music, this follows that format where this first section is repeated and then the second section is repeated. So here is our piano quartet, our score. This is our Shiv Yog She Wore inverted. It's in two parts, exactly the same as the score we've just looked at. Here's our first part. There's a repeat sign here, okay? So it goes back to there. So it goes down along here, and then it repeats to there, okay? On the second time, this is called a first time bar. So on the repeat, you skip that and you go to the second time bar and you continue on. This is the second half of Shiv Yog She Wore upside down. And again, it's repeated in the same way as the one on the previous page. It's exactly the same layout. Okay, so we have part one repeated, part two repeated. He has done the same. Part one repeated, part two repeated. Now, if you want to, I'll zoom in. If you want to fill some of this stuff in on your scores, it says here, bar 1 to 52, C major in two distinct parts. Inversion of Shiv Yog She Wore. Bar 1 to 26 is a 4-part canon. We've had that before in our Bach, and we had it in our Tchaikovsky. So a canon is a classical word for a round. At the octave means that they're each starting an octave apart. So we have our E there. You see the way there's the little zeros as well. This is our open string. He's looking for them to use open string E there. This is our alto clef. So there's middle C is on that line. So the first note there on the alto clef in the viola is C, D, and there's E. Okay, so it's E. This is E just above middle C. So that's an octave lower than this one. This C is down in the bass clef, so it's an octave below middle C. And then the left hand of the piano has the E there, is the start of the canon in the left hand piano. Okay, so what it means, 4-part canon at the octave means that they're playing an octave apart, okay, and at a crotchet's distance. So that means they're coming in one crotchet after each other. Now, you see the way there's a number 1 there and a number 2 there. That means on the first playing, it's forte, which is loud. On the repeat, it's MP, so it's mezzo piano, moderately quiet. Okay, so that all of the instruments have that marking. So it's a tricky score to follow because it's quite fast and it's hard enough to follow. But you'll definitely hear the change because it's block dynamics. It's all loud and then suddenly all quiet, okay? The other thing you need to know is here's our senza vibrato is highlighted here in pink. Senza vibrato, so there's no vibrato. It's all detached bowing, so there's no slurred. All the stringed instruments are playing, there's ties across bar lines, but that's not a slur. That's instead of the minim, so there's your minim there. And instead of, they have to have a tie across a bar line because you can't have a minim going across a bar line. And you can see that they're all marked with zeros for open strings. So that's an open string E that's the highest string on the violin. There's light staccato, and it's only the left hand of the piano because he uses the piano in a quite an unusual way. He uses the piano, almost changes this into a quintet instead of a quartet, because he uses the piano as if the right hand and the left hand were kind of two different instruments at times, okay? So this one is a 4-part canon, but the next one you'll see isn't quite the same. So it goes on down here. We have a change of time signature here to a 4/4 just for 1 bar, and then it goes back to 3/4 again. And then we have a 4/4 here again before the repeat. Okay, now the second page, the part 2 of this, is a 5-part canon. So from bar 27 to 52, is a 5-part canon at the octave and at a crotchet's distance. So it's going the opposite way now. It's starting in the lowest part and moving its way up. It's still at a crotchet's distance, so they're coming in a crotchet. These are quavers, okay? So that's coming in a crotchet later, that's coming in a crotchet later, that's coming in a crotchet later, etc., etc. Okay, so it's coming in again at a crotchet's distance, but it's starting at the bottom and moving up into the upper parts. And again, they're an octave apart. And now, in order to achieve that, the violin has to go up into these crazy ledger lines. This here means play an octave higher than it's written. So this bit here is gone up above this, you know, it's gone really sky high. So on the violin, you'd be moving your fingers right up near close to the bridge to achieve those notes. So do you remember we were talking about 20th century? One of the things that it's very commonly done is the extremes of the instrument. So that's a good example of the extremes of the instrument being used here. In this part, the first time we hear it is forte. On the repeat, it's fortissimo. Okay, let's see, is there anything else there marked? And the repeat is marked. So there's not too much writing really on this. Okay, so let's listen to it now. Okay, so it's tricky enough to follow, even though it kind of seems like it should be simple enough to follow because it's all those detached notes. So you kind of need to pick one line. So the violin is probably the easiest to follow because you can hear the melody there and then it goes back, it repeats again. If you get lost when you're trying to follow it, you hear the drop to kind of a quieter and then you know you're back at the top again if you get lost. And again, on the second page, it goes mad off into these high notes. And if you get lost there and then you hear that suddenly gets louder, there's no crescendos or decrescendos. It's just pure blocks of dynamics. This again is the 2 pages, the first 2 pages of the score. This is the previous slide flipped upside down, okay? And highlighted here in yellow, if you were to go back now and compare this to the notes of She Vyog She Wore, this is it. These are the notes of She Vyog She Wore. If I was to play this on the piano, or any instrument indeed, as if this had a treble clef here at the start, and this is my do re mi of She Vyog She Wore, this is what it would sound like. Now you might have noticed there was like a couple of notes missing here, so there's a tiny little bit left out there, and it kind of ends a bit abruptly there at the end. But other than that, it sounds pretty much identical to She Vyog She Wore, which I think is really, really clever. This is the A section. This section is in C major and in 2 parts. It is an inversion of the traditional tune She Vyog She Wore. The first half is a 4-part canon at the octave and a crotchet's distance. The 4 parts are in the following order. Violin, so it starts off the top and heads downwards. Violin, viola, cello and piano left hand. The second half is a 5-part canon at the octave and a crotchet's distance, and the 5 parts are in the following order. So it's starting at the bottom and heading upwards: piano left hand, piano right hand, cello, viola, violin. Both parts. So there, it's, as I said, he's treating the piano as 2 separate instruments. So the left hand and the right hand are 2 different parts of the canon. Both parts are repeated with a change of dynamic on repeat. The first page is forte and then MP on the repeat. The second page is forte and then fortissimo, so getting louder, on the repeat. There is no sense of introduction. It begins immediately with all instruments involved. There is a very wide range in the instruments to allow each instrument to enter an octave apart, and it's a polyphonic texture because it's a canon. Okay, so we've had that texture already in our Bach.